Above the place she called home for more than a decade, the flag was lowered gently not long after Margaret Thatcher's death was announced. Downing Street was the place she loved. It was the nerve centre of the Thatcher master plan. But on the day she died, the news filtered only slowly among groups of tourists, police officers and those still at work on a quiet Westminster lunchtime. Today's Prime Minister was overseas, though quick to react and to prepare to return home.
Today is a truly sad day for our country. We've lost a great Prime Minister, a great leader, a great Britain. As our first woman Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher succeeded against all the odds. And the real thing about Margaret Thatcher is that she didn't just lead our country, she saved our country. And I believe she'll go down as the greatest British peacetime Prime Minister. Today is obviously a day we should most of all think of her family.
With David Cameron out of the country, Downing Street initially had that sleepy air of parliamentary recess. Not for long, though. The national and international media is now going to descend to remember one of the genuine political superstars this country has produced. There were no half measures with Margaret Thatcher. She was the most loved Prime Minister and the most hated.
Joining the Labour Party, are you?
The one with the strongest influence, surely. Yet the most vilified too.
Yes, I will have a steak.
How'd you like it?
Oh, raw, please.
She stopped Britain going bust and turned things round and made it possible to govern Britain again.
I abominated Thatcherism for its absolutism, for its cruelty, for its divisiveness.
She was undoubtedly a remarkable Prime Minister. One has to put her among the major figures of the 20th century without a doubt.
No one who lived it has forgotten the Thatcherite decade. It casts a long shadow. Even today we feel the effect of her personality, her policies, and of Margaret Thatcher's vision of Britain.
Britain, when we came into office, was in the last chance saloon. And everyone realised, I think, people realised, that we really had to do a lot of rather tough things about it. And Margaret had a clear vision of what was necessary.
It was conviction politics. I know that's become a jargon phrase, but she had a strong idea of what she wanted to do. It was based on what she thought was the right thing to do.
Strange to think it now, but they underestimated Margaret Thatcher at first. Ted Heath never got over being dumped for an upstart grocer's daughter. The grand old Tories were slightly baffled by her sudden rise. When Labour was swept from office in 1979, the country didn't really know what to expect.
Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
But the Thatcherite revolution got off to a faltering start. Tough measures to bear down on inflation fuelled the rise in unemployment. Soon her poll ratings were rock bottom, and the new PM had her back to the wall.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favourite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
That obdurate spirit would soon be put to the test in an unexpected arena. When the Argentinian General Galtieri ordered his troops into the Falkland Islands, he could have had no inkling of the determination with which Margaret Thatcher would coordinate the British counter-offensive.
It was a very, very brave thing to do against all the odds, 12,000 miles. And we now know that probably if one more capital ship had gone down, the whole response of the British to the Argentinian invasion would have failed.
By the time the staging post of South Georgia fell to British forces, the martial spirit had really taken hold.
God save the Queen.
What happens next, Mr. Nott?
Thank you very much.
What's your reaction,
Rejoice at that news and congratulate our forces and the Marines.
And once this bitter conflict had been won, those who doubted the Prime Minister's military judgment found themselves in a minority.
What was wrong with rejoicing? What is wrong with rejoicing when you've achieved success? God, there are some people in Britain, and this is what she was up against, who will never, ever ever give any credit to Britain. We never rejoice in its success.
Margaret Thatcher's approach to Northern Ireland was uncompromising too. She allowed 10 Republican hunger strikers to die in the Maze prison, thereby reinforcing her status as the IRA's #1 target. In Brighton, they came perilously close. But in retrospect, for all the bloodshed among those near to the Prime Minister, the bombing succeeded principally in carving a further chapter in the burgeoning Thatcher legend.
The fact that we are gathered here now, shocked but composed and determined, is a sign not only that this attack has failed, but that all attempts to destroy democracy by terrorism will fail.
Confounding powerful foes was becoming a Margaret Thatcher trademark. She remembered well how striking miners helped defeat the Heath government, and if she now relished the prospect of grinding down the miners' leader, it was no less than he'd have wished for her.
There was a conscious effort to build up the coal stocks, to make sure there were contingency provisions made. Fortunately, she was a good strategist. Scargill was the most incompetent leader of an army I've ever encountered. To call a coal strike at the beginning of the summer, to alienate all the coal miners in my constituency and the rest of Nottinghamshire by not holding a ballot, he could not have played his hand worse.
The country was divided by a drawn-out and pitiless dispute. The spectacle of trades unions being brought painfully to heel angered some. For others, it was a vital step, clearing the path for business, enterprise and wealth creation.
I'll do my bit. I know you'll do yours.
My name is Rio and she dances on the sand.
Thatcherism was reaching its high watermark. Privatisation, conspicuous consumption, yuppies, the works. All this may be a distant memory for today's Labour leader, but Ed Miliband knows many in his party bear scars from the battles of the 80s, and his tribute was not without qualification.
Of course, Lady Thatcher stirs up deep feelings among people, particularly in the Labour Party, but I think now is not the time for party politics. We've suspended our political campaigning as a mark of respect for Lady Thatcher, and I think that this time is a time to remember what she actually achieved as a person, because I think, you can dislike her or you can like her, but whatever view you take, she was clearly an extraordinary politician and a unique political figure.
There were unequivocal admirers, of course, none more devoted than Ronald Reagan.
Margaret ended our first meeting by telling me we must stand together. And that's exactly what we've done.
Margaret Thatcher had been among the first to urge Reagan to deal with the Soviet reformer Mikhail Gorbachev, and as the wall fell, it was widely viewed as a victory for her and her American partners' staunch defence of freedom. As Margaret Thatcher's reputation overseas soared, at home she was losing her grip. With opposition to her poll tax project at fever pitch, the Iron Lady began to look obstinate and out of touch.
The single most unpopular policy that any government has followed for as long as I can remember.
The real tragedy is
Cabinet colleagues deserted her and stuck the knife in.
it's rather like sending your opening batsman to the crease, only for them to find, the moment the first balls are bowled, that their bats have been broken before the game by the team captain.
Michael Heseltine's subsequent challenge for the leadership holds the Prime Minister below the waterline, though at first she wouldn't admit it.
Where's the microphone? It's here, this is the microphone.
Naturally very pleased that I got more than half the parliamentary party and disappointed that it's not quite enough to win on the first ballot. So I confirm it is my intention to let my name go forward for the second ballot.
We had one of our typically robust conversations. She said, "You're being defeatist." And I said, "But you've been defeated. I'm not being defeatist. You won't win a second ballot. The party wants you to stand down."
And so, to her evident bewilderment, the party turfed its true blue champion out on her ear.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving Downing Street for the last time after 11.5 wonderful years, and we're very happy that we leave the United Kingdom in a very, very much better state than when we came here 11.5 years ago.
These traumatic moments scarred the Conservatives. For her supporters, it was nothing short of treachery. The party Margaret Thatcher had drawn together fell into years of squabbles and fierce recrimination. For many years, indeed to the last, a group of close friends looked after Margaret Thatcher, housing her in the Ritz Hotel as her health failed. Many more supporters will have the opportunity to voice their tributes as preparations for a full ceremonial funeral at St Paul's are completed. Of all modern-day politicians, Margaret Thatcher is the figure against which others measure themselves. Measure their aspirations, measure their achievements.
Listen to everyone. I must go down and talk to them.
It's an unforgiving business. If the truth be told, there aren't many who benefit from comparison with Margaret Thatcher.